Part 1. The Galactic Concord Assembly Chamber hung in the quiet dark of space, a great silver ring orbiting the gas giant Helios Prime. Inside, under soft blue lighting and walls lined with living moss from a dozen worlds, over 300 delegates sat in silence. Each represented a civilization, some ancient, some newly starfaring, all bound by the Concord's charter of peace, trade, and shared knowledge. Humanity had been part of this council for 217 years. Earth was not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most advanced, but it was trusted. Earth's voice often calmed tempers, bridged gaps, and reminded others that cooperation was possible, even among beings who barely understood one another. Paul Dawson sat in Earth's assigned seat near the center of the chamber. He was not a soldier, not a scientist, not even a career politician. He had been a history teacher in Ohio before the Concord asked Earth for a new delegate after the last one retired. Paul wore a simple gray suit, no medals, no glowing insignia like the others. His hands rested on the smooth surface of the table, calm but cold. He had rehearsed what he would say 100 times, but now, with every eye in the chamber turned toward him, some with compound lenses, some with thermal pits, some with nothing but thought sensors, he felt the weight of it all pressed down like gravity from a dead star. A chime sounded. The Varelian speaker, tall and silver-skinned with eyes like polished obsidian, nodded toward Earth Station. "Delegate Dawson," she said, her voice translated through the chamber's universal field. "You have requested an emergency address. The floor is yours." Paul stood. He did not look at the data pads, the holoscreens, or the anxious faces of his human aides behind him. He looked straight ahead at the center of the room, where the Concord's emblem, a circle of intertwined spirals, floated in midair. "Members of the Concord," he began, his voice steady but quiet. "After careful and unanimous deliberation by the Unified Earth Council, I am directed to announce that Earth hereby withdraws its membership from the Galactic Concord. Effective immediately. Silence, then noise," a Karathi delegate, half machine and half flesh, emitted a sharp burst of static, an alarm signal in their language. A Xanthari envoy slammed a three-fingered fist on the table. The Varelian speaker leaned forward, her long neck coiling slightly in disbelief. "Withdrawal?" she asked. "On what grounds?" "There has been no violation, no dispute, no—" "I am not authorized to provide further explanation," Paul said. "The decision is final, that was all. No accusations. No demands. No farewell." He sat down. Chaos followed. Voices rose in a dozen languages, some spoken, some sung, some pulsed through the air as light or scent. The chamber's harmony field struggled to keep up. Security drones hovered near the ceiling, their sensors scanning for aggression. Paul did not move. He stared at his hands, remembering his daughter's voice that morning, asking if he'd be home for dinner. He hadn't known how to answer. Outside the chamber, the news spread faster than any ship could fly. Within minutes, every major news net in the galaxy carried the headline, "Earth leaves Concord." Markets on the trade moon of Xylos dropped 30% in an hour. The Free Systems Alliance placed its border fleets on alert. On the pleasure world of Lumen, tourists canceled reservations, fearing instability. In the asteroid slums of the Karathi Belt, smugglers began hoarding Earth-made goods, guessing they'd soon be rare. Back on Earth, most people didn't even notice. In Chicago, kids played hoverball in the evening sun. In Nairobi, farmers checked their vertical gardens under artificial rain. In Mumbai, a street musician played an old guitar, singing about love and loss. Life went on. But in the high-security orbital command center above the moon, Admiral Nora Finch watched the galaxy's reaction with growing concern. She had known this was coming. She had helped plan it, but seeing the panic unfold in real time made her stomach twist. She tapped her console. "Get me Paul Dawson the moment he's back on the shuttle." Meanwhile, on Mars Colony Theta, Lisa Grant paused her work. She was a xenolinguist, one of the best Earth had. For 10 years, she had translated alien dialects, helped draft treaties, even taught Varelian children basic English through song. Her office overlooked the red plains of Valle Marineris, dust storms swirling in the distance. The broadcast from Helios Prime played on her wall screen. When Paul said the words, "withdraws its membership," she froze. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She knew what this meant. Without Earth in the Concord, the fragile balance between the Xanthari hegemony and the Free Systems Alliance would collapse. Trade routes would close. Old grudges would flare. And Earth? Earth would be alone. cut off from shared tech, from mutual defense, from the only system that had kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart for 2 centuries. She sat down, numb. Then she opened a private channel to her brother, who worked in Earth's Ministry of External Affairs. "What's going on?" she typed. "Why would we do this?" The reply came minutes later, brief and cold. "Classified. Don't ask. Don't tell anyone you asked." Lisa stared at the message. She had spent her life building bridges between species. Now her own world had burned the biggest one. Far from Mars, near the edge of human-controlled space, engineer Dan Ruiz floated inside Research Outpost Epsilon 9. It was a tiny station, barely big enough for 3 people, used to monitor deep space signals. Dan was alone today, running diagnostics on the long-range array. He liked the quiet. Out here, the stars didn't argue. They just shone. Then his console beeped. An anomaly. A repeating signal, faint but clear, coming from beyond the Perseus arm. He frowned. It sounded human, old human. He isolated the frequency and played it through his headset. A voice crackled through static. "This is Radio Moscow, broadcasting to all nations on Earth, December 24th, 1968. Dan's eyes widened. That was over 300 years ago. How was this signal still traveling? And why was it echoing now, in a region of space where nothing should be? He flagged the data for review. Standard procedure. But when he tried to send it to Concord Signal Analysis, as he'd done 100 times before, the system rejected the request. Destination not recognized, it said. Of course, Earth wasn't in the Concord anymore. He rerouted the file to Earth Central Archives. The upload began, but halfway through it was intercepted. A new message popped up. Transfer authorized under Project Horizon. Clearance level, Omega. Dan had never heard of Project Horizon. Back on Earth, Paul Dawson stepped off the shuttle in Geneva. Rain fell softly on the tarmac. No reporters, no crowds. Just 2 plain-clothed officers who escorted him into a black ground car. As they drove through the quiet streets, he looked out the window at ordinary life. People walking dogs, buying bread, arguing with friends. None of them knew their world had just changed forever. He thought about the silence in the Concord chamber after he spoke. Not anger, not even confusion. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes when something unthinkable happens, like watching a star go out. The car stopped at an unmarked building. Paul got out. He took a deep breath. Then he walked inside, ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere, far beyond the Milky Way, something old and vast turned its attention toward the place that had just gone quiet. Kurtziner. The galaxy did not fall apart all at once. It cracked slowly like ice under too much weight. At first, many thought Earth's exit was a mistake. A glitch in translation, a miscommunication, maybe even a prank. But as days passed and Earth's embassies closed, its trade ships returned home, and its voting seat in the Concord remained empty. The truth settled in like cold fog. Earth was gone, and without it, the old tensions no longer had a dam to hold them back. The Zenthari hegemony, a proud and militaristic empire that spanned 17 star systems, had long distrusted the Free Systems Alliance, a loose coalition of independent worlds that valued liberty over order. Earth had always stood between them, offering neutral ground for talks, sharing intelligence, even hosting joint training exercises to build trust. Now, with Earth silent, the Zenthari accused the Free Systems of hiding weapons in abandoned Concord listening posts. The Free Systems denied it, but their tone was sharp, defensive. Within a week, both sides moved warships to the border zone near the Kessel Rift. Trade suffered next. The Concord had kept shipping lanes open and tariffs fair. Without its oversight, tariffs doubled overnight. A shipment of medical nanites from the Varelian worlds, meant for a plague-stricken colony in the Orion Spur, was held at a karate checkpoint for inspection. It sat there for 10 days. By the time it arrived, half the colony was dead. Blame flew in all directions. No one apologized. On Earth, most people still didn't understand what was happening. News from the outer systems was limited, filtered through government channels that spoke in calm, vague terms. Adjustments are being made, one broadcast said. Temporary disruptions may occur. But in the orbital command center above the moon, Admiral Nora Finch saw the full picture. Her screens showed fleet movements, encrypted comms spikes, and refugee ships crowding near former Earth protectorates. only to be turned away by local militias who now saw humans as unpredictable, maybe even dangerous. Nora rubbed her temples. She had spent 30 years in space defense believing in the Concorde's mission. Now she was watching it unravel, and Earth was being blamed for it. She opened a secure line to Paul Dawson. "They're calling us traitors," she said. "Even the Varelians are pulling back. We've got colonies out there with no support." "I know," Paul replied. His voice was tired. "But we can't explain." "Not yet. People are dying because of this silence," Nora said. "And more will die if we speak too soon," Paul answered. Then the line went dead. Meanwhile, on Mars Colony Theta, Lisa Grant tried to keep working. But every message she received from alien contacts now carried suspicion. A Varelian friend asked if Earth had discovered a superweapon. A Karathi linguist wondered if humanity was planning to leave the galaxy entirely. Lisa didn't know what to say. She told the truth. "I don't know." But "I don't know" sounded like a lie in a time of fear. She requested reassignment. To her surprise, it was approved within hours. Her new orders came with no explanation, just coordinates and a clearance code. She packed her few belongings and boarded a shuttle to Luna. From there, a black-hulled transport took her beyond the moon, to a station she'd never heard of. It had no name, just a number, Horizon 7. The station was cold, quiet, and buried deep in a shielded orbit. Inside, scientists and engineers moved like ghosts, speaking in hushed tones. No windows. No logos, just work. Lisa was given a small room and a datapad loaded with files marked Omega Clearance Only. She opened the first one. It showed deep space scans, empty regions where stars had once been. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. No light, no heat, no signal. As if they had never existed. Her hands shook. Far away, on Research Outpost Epsilon 9, Dan Ruiz still couldn't stop thinking about that old radio signal. He'd tried to trace its origin, but the echo bounced off something in deep space, something that shouldn't be there. He ran simulations. Nothing matched known cosmic phenomena. Then, 3 nights later, another signal came through. This time it was a baseball game from 1956. Then a children's cartoon from 1998. Then a presidential speech from 2031. All human, all ancient, all repeating in a loop far beyond the edge of explored space. Dan reported it again. Again, the file was rerouted to Project Horizon. This time a message came back. "Report to Horizon 7, immediate transfer. Do not discuss with anyone." He stared at the words. He had never applied for a transfer. He barely knew what Horizon was. But orders were orders. He shut down the outpost, sealed the logs, and boarded the next supply shuttle. Back on Earth, life pretended to be normal. In Denver, a couple argued about school districts. In Rio, street artists painted murals of ocean waves. In Toronto, a robotics lab unveiled a new helper bot for elderly care. But beneath the surface, unease grew. Ships that used to bring exotic fruits from the Varelian worlds now brought nothing. Newsfeeds showed blurry footage of alien protests outside closed Earth embassies. Some humans began hoarding supplies. Others demanded answers. The government said nothing. Then the first system went dark. It was a small mining colony near the Andromeda Fringe, human-run, but under Concord protection. One moment it sent a routine status update. The next, silence. No distress call. No explosion. Just an empty frequency where a living world had been. The Concorde sent a scout ship. It vanished too. Panic spread faster than light. The Varelians called an emergency session, but Earth wasn't there to mediate. The Karathi locked down their borders. The free systems declared martial law. Refugees from outer colonies flooded toward inner worlds begging for shelter. Many were turned away. Some were shot. On Horizon 7, Lisa sat in a briefing room with Dan Ruiz, Paul Dawson, and a dozen others. A woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense voice stood at the front. Her name was Dr. Elena Marsh. She didn't waste time. "For 200 years, she said, we told the Concord about the anomaly. They called it noise. They said our sensors were faulty. They laughed." She pulled up a star map. Dozens of black dots appeared, systems that had gone silent over the last 50 years. All along a single path, all heading this way. The entity, whatever it is, consumes everything. Not just matter, not just energy, information, memory, meaning. It leaves nothing behind because it erases the very idea of what was there. Lisa felt sick. Why didn't we tell anyone? Because if we had, Paul said quietly, the galaxy would have torn itself apart trying to run, fight, or bargain. And while they fought each other, the real threat would keep coming. Unseen. Unstopped. Dan looked at the map. How long? 98 years, Dr. Marsh said. Maybe less. It's speeding up. Silence filled the room, not the silence of confusion, the silence of understanding. Down on Earth, a child in Seattle pointed to the night sky and asked her mother why the stars looked dimmer. Her mother didn't know. She hugged her daughter tighter and said, "It's just clouds, sweetheart." But there were no clouds. In the command center above the moon, Admiral Nora Finch watched the latest reports. More systems silent, more fleets mobilizing, more fear. She opened a private channel, not to Paul, not to Earth Command, but to a Varelian contact she'd known for 20 years. She sent one file, raw sensor data from the anomaly's path. No message, just proof. Hours later, a reply came. Not words, just a single musical note, a Varelian tone of mourning and respect. Nora closed her eyes. Maybe the galaxy wasn't lost yet, but time was running out, and Earth had already made its choice, not to lead but to prepare, not to explain but to protect, even if it meant being hated, even if it meant standing alone, and far beyond the Milky Way in the endless dark between galaxies, something vast and hungry moved closer, drawn not by weapons or war, but by the one thing it could not consume, the quiet, stubborn echo of a species that refused to stop feeling. Part 3. Beneath 2 miles of ice in northern Greenland, deep inside a cavern carved by ancient drills and shielded by layers of lead, titanium, and quantum dampeners, lay the heart of Project Horizon. No map showed it. No satellite could see it. To the rest of the world, it did not exist. But inside, hundreds of scientists, engineers, linguists, and strategists worked in shifts around the clock, not to build weapons or ships, but to understand the silence that was coming. Paul Dawson walked through the central corridor, his shoes clicking softly on the metal floor. He no longer wore a suit. Now he wore a gray uniform with no rank, no name tag, just a small silver pin shaped like a human ear. It meant he could hear everything. He passed labs where researchers studied old Earth music, others where poets and writers recorded stories in every language still spoken on the planet. In one room, children played while sensors measured the emotional resonance of their laughter. In another, elders spoke of loss, love, and memory, their voices captured in crystal archives. This was not a military base. It was a library of feeling. Lisa Grant sat in a soundproof chamber, headphones on, listening to a Varelian lullaby sent by a contact who had once trusted her. The melody was strange, made of harmonic hums and slow pulses, but it carried the same warmth as the songs her grandmother used to sing. She typed notes into her pad. Emotion pattern matches human maternal bonding frequency. Suggest inclusion in echo grid beta test. Across the hall, Dan Ruiz worked with a team of signal engineers. They had taken old broadcasts, radio dramas, news reports, wedding vows, protest chants, and stripped them down to their emotional core. Not the words, but the tone beneath them, the hope in a voice, the fear in a pause, the joy in a laugh. They were turning human history into a language of feeling, one that might speak to something that had never known life. Dr. Elena Marsh entered the room. She carried a data slate and looked like she hadn't slept in days. "We've confirmed it," she said to Dan. "The anomaly doesn't respond to energy. It ignores lasers, plasma bursts, even gravity waves. But when we played a recording of a mother singing to her newborn, just that, nothing else, it slowed. By 0.3%. It's small, but it's real." Dan nodded. "So it's not a machine, it's curious. Or lonely," Lisa said from the doorway. She had overheard. What if it's never heard anything like this before? What if it's drawn to us not to destroy but to understand? Elena looked at her. "Then we have to give it something worth understanding." Back on the surface, the world still spun in confusion. Earth's withdrawal from the conquered had caused chaos, but now a deeper fear was growing. Strange blackouts in deep space, ships vanishing without a trace, whispers of a void eater spread through underground nets. Governments denied it, but people knew something was wrong. In cities, more families stayed indoors at night, staring at the sky, wondering why the stars seemed fewer. The Unified Earth Council held daily meetings in a bunker beneath Geneva. They debated whether to reveal the truth. Some argued that humanity deserved to know. Others warned that panic would cause riots, crashes, mass suicides. In the end, they chose silence. Not out of cruelty, but care. They would prepare in secret so that when the time came, Earth would not just survive, it would speak. On Horizon 7, Paul met with Admiral Nora Finch via secure link. Her face looked older, her eyes tired. "The Varelians sent us something," she said. "An archive of their oldest songs, sung during their planet's ice age when they thought they'd go extinct. They want us to include it in the echo grid." Paul smiled faintly. "They believe us." "They're scared," Nora corrected. "But they're listening. That's a start." Meanwhile, Dan made a breakthrough. He discovered that the anomaly reacted more strongly to raw, unfiltered emotion, like a live broadcast, than to recordings. "It's not just the sound," he explained to the team. "It's the fact that someone is feeling it right now, real-time, present, alive." So they began testing live feeds. A dancer in Kyoto performed under a single spotlight, her movements full of sorrow and grace. A choir in Lagos sang an old spiritual, voices trembling with hope. A fisherman in Alaska spoke to his grandson about the sea, his voice rough but kind. Each feed was beamed into deep space aimed at the approaching silence. For the first time, the anomaly stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Data poured in from deep space monitors. The leading edge of the void held its position for over 12 hours. Then it pulsed once like a heartbeat. Lisa cried when she saw the readout. "It hurt us," she whispered. But celebration was brief. The Xanthari hegemony, still convinced the free systems were hiding Earth-made weapons, launched a surprise strike on a relay station near the Orion Arm. The station was empty, but the attack broke the last thread of trust. The free systems retaliated. War flared along the border. Refugees fled inward toward Earth's former allies, but those worlds, now paranoid and armed, shut their gates. Earth remained silent. Yet in secret, its message grew louder. In a hidden lab in Brazil, neuroscientists mapped the brainwaves of people feeling awe, watching a sunset, holding a newborn, hearing a perfect chord. In Norway, composers blended human and alien melodies into new harmonies. In Mumbai, street poets recorded verses about fear and courage, then sent them to Horizon. The project was no longer just Earth's. Word had spread through back channels, trusted contacts, old friends in the galaxy. Small contributions came from Varelian monks, Karathi memory keepers, even a Xanthari poet who risked exile to send a single line. "I am afraid, but I will not hide." Paul stood in the main chamber of Project Horizon, watching a wall of screens showing live feeds from across the planet. A child in Cairo drew a picture of the stars and said, "I hope you're not alone out there." An old man in Vancouver played a violin on his porch, tears on his cheeks playing a song he'd written for his late wife. A group of teenagers in Jakarta laughed as they told ghost stories, their voices bright and alive. This was humanity's weapon. Not fire, not steel, but feeling. Dan joined him. "We're ready for Phase 2, he said. "The echo grid can go live across 50 frequencies. We'll blanket the outer rim with real-time emotion, not just human. Anyone who wants to join," Paul nodded. "Then do it." That night, for the first time in history, Earth did not broadcast technology, politics, or war. It broadcast a lullaby from Nairobi, a drumbeat from Peru, a whispered prayer from Tibet, a baby's first cry from Oslo, all woven together into a single stream of raw, living presence. And far away at the edge of known space, the silence listened. It did not move forward, it did not retreat, it simply waited, as if giving the galaxy a chance to speak again, not with weapons or treaties, but with truth. Down in the ice, Lisa recorded her own message. She didn't talk about science or survival. She talked about her dog who died when she was 10. She talked about how she still missed him, how love leaves a mark even when it's gone. She sent it into the dark, and somewhere in the endless between, something that had only known emptiness felt the first touch of warmth. Part for the galaxy burned while Earth whispered. War spread like wildfire along the Orion Spur. The Xanthari hegemony and the Free Systems Alliance, once held in check by conquered treaties and Earth's quiet diplomacy, now fired missiles instead of messages. Planets that had traded spices and star charts for generations now hid behind shields and minefields. Refugees crowded onto overloaded freighters, begging for shelter on worlds that turned them away with cold silence. The Concord, once a symbol of unity, was now a ghost. Its assembly chamber empty, its laws ignored, its name spoken with bitterness. Yet in the middle of it all, Earth stayed quiet. No declarations, no alliances, no fleet sent to intervene. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity had vanished, not just from politics, but from the shared story of civilization. Many called Earth cowardly. Others called it treacherous. A few, in the darkest corners of data nets, whispered that Earth knew something they didn't, that it had seen the end coming and chosen to save only itself. But inside the ice of Greenland and the shielded decks of Horizon 7, the truth was far different. Earth wasn't hiding. It was singing. The echo grid had grown. What began as a trickle of human voices had become a river. Varelian monks sent chants recorded in their crystal caves. Karathi elders uploaded neural imprints of joy, grief, and wonder, emotions their cybernetic society had nearly forgotten. Even a splinter group of Zenthari artists, defying their government, transmitted a symphony made of wind, metal, and memory. All of it flowed into the grid, then out into the void, aimed at the silent thing that had stopped just beyond the Milky Way. And it worked. The anomaly did not move closer. It hovered as if listening. Sensors showed faint ripples in its edge, like waves stirred by a distant voice. Hope flickered in Project Horizon. Maybe they could hold it back. Maybe they could even teach it something, but hope was fragile. On Luna Station, Admiral Nora Finch watched the war unfold with growing dread. She had sent the Varelians proof of the anomaly months ago. They believed her. But belief didn't stop missiles. A Free Systems cruiser, damaged in battle, strayed too close to a Varelian mining moon. The Varelians shot it down. The Free Systems declared it an act of war. Now entire sectors were aflame. Nora knew Earth couldn't stay silent forever. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, and when it was weak, the real enemy would come. She requested emergency clearance to speak at a neutral summit being held on the abandoned Concord outpost, Theta 9. Her request was denied. Too risky, came the reply. Maintain silence. She disobeyed. Using an old diplomatic shuttle with no Earth markings, she flew to Theta 9 alone. The station was half ruined, its lights flickering, its halls empty except for a few desperate delegates who had come anyway. Varelians, Karathi, even a lone Zenthari envoy in plain robes. They looked at her with suspicion. She was human, and humans had abandoned them. Nora didn't sit. She stood in the center of the broken chamber and played a file. Not words, not data, just sound. A child laughing in Barcelona, a rainstorm in Bangkok, a grandmother humming in rural Kenya, all woven together with Varelian harmonics and Karathi pulse rhythms. The room fell still. This is what we're protecting, she said. Not territory, not power. This, the Varelian delegate stepped forward. Is this the reason Earth left? Nora nodded. We tried to tell you. You didn't believe us. So we chose to act instead of argue. The Zenthari envoy removed his hood. His face was lined with age and regret. My people think this is a trick, but I heard my granddaughter's voice in that sound. She lives on a border world. If this war continues, she will die. Not from the void, but from us. Silence returned. But this time it was thoughtful. Back on Earth, protests grew louder. People demanded answers. Why were alien ships turning away Earth traders? Why were supplies running low? Why did the stars look dimmer every night? The government held firm, but cracks appeared. A junior minister leaked a vague statement about an external threat. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some said Earth was building a secret weapon. Others said the planet was already doomed. Lisa Grant watched the unrest from Horizon 7. She wanted to speak out to tell the truth, but she knew it would only cause panic. Instead, she focused on her work. She helped translate emotional patterns from alien sources into forms the echo grid could use. She found that grief, when shared, created a stronger signal than fear. That hope, even small, carried farther than anger. Dan Ruiz made another discovery. The anomaly didn't just respond to emotion, it remembered it. Old broadcasts once played left a faint echo in its structure. It was learning, adapting, maybe even changing. We're not just slowing it, he told Paul. We're teaching it what it means to be alive. Paul looked at the star map. The anomaly still hadn't moved. But the war raged closer to Earth's borders. A refugee ship, carrying families from a destroyed colony, drifted near Mars. Earth's defense grid flagged it as a potential threat. Standard protocol said to destroy it. Paul overrode the order. Let them land, he said. On Mars Colony Theta, quietly, the ship was allowed to dock. Its passengers, humans, Varelians, even a Karathi child, stepped onto red soil, exhausted but alive. Lisa met them. She didn't wear a uniform. She wore a simple jacket and carried water. She spoke in calm tones in 3 languages. She didn't mention the anomaly. She didn't mention the war. She just said, "You're safe here." One Varelian woman hugged her and whispered, "Your voices reached us in the dark." We followed them. News of the rescue spread, not through official channels, but through whispers, encrypted messages, old friendship lines. The galaxy began to wonder. If Earth was truly selfish, why had it taken in strangers? Then came the worst news yet. A system near Andromeda, home to a peaceful farming world of mixed species, went silent. Not in war, not an explosion. Just gone, no signal, no light. The anomaly had moved again, not because it was angry, but because someone had stopped singing. On the farming world, the echo grid relay had been destroyed in a border skirmish. The music stopped, and the void stepped forward. In Horizon 7, alarms sounded. Dr. Elena Marsh ran to the main chamber. "We have to expand the grid," she said. Every world, every voice now, Paul knew what that meant. It was time to stop hiding. He walked to the communications hub, placed his hand on the console, and opened a channel. Not to one world, but to all. Human, Varelian, Karathi, Xanthari, free systems, and more. The signal bypassed governments, militaries, firewalls. It went straight to public networks, personal devices, even old emergency broadcast systems. And he spoke. Not as a delegate. Not as a leader. Just as a man. "This is Paul Dawson of Earth," he said. "We left the Conquered because we saw something coming that none of us can fight with weapons. It doesn't want your planets. It doesn't want your resources. It wants silence. And the only thing that stops it is us, our voices, our feelings, our stories." He paused. "You don't have to trust us. But if you want to live, join us. Sing, speak, cry, laugh, anything real, anything true. Send it into the dark. We'll collect it. We'll amplify it. Together, we might just be loud enough to keep the night away." Then he ended the transmission. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, signals began to arrive. A lullaby from a Varelian nursery. A warrior's oath from a Xanthari elder. A Karathi memory of their first sunrise after becoming part machine. A free systems rebel singing a song of home. The echo grid swelled, and far away, at the edge of everything, the silence paused once more. This time, it did not step forward. It tilted its unseen face toward the sound and listened. The galaxy did not heal overnight. Wars do not end with a single speech, and fear does not vanish because someone tells the truth. But something had shifted. After Paul Dawson's message, the silence that followed was not empty. It was waiting. And then slowly the voices came, not from governments or fleets, but from people. From homes, schools, temples, marketplaces, from those who still remembered how to feel. The echo grid grew into something no one had planned, a living network of shared presence. A child on a war-torn moon sent a drawing of her lost cat, whispering its name into a broken comm unit. A Varelian poet recited verses about starlight and sorrow from a cave where his people hid. A Karathi engineer, half machine, recorded the sound of rain on metal and called it peace. All of it flowed into the grid, then out into the dark, where the anomaly waited, and it listened. Sensors showed the void no longer advancing. Instead, it pulsed gently like a heart learning to beat. Scientists in Project Horizon debated what it meant. Was it confused? Calmed? Changed? No one knew for sure. But they knew one thing. As long as the voices continued, the silence stayed still. On Earth, life began to change. The government, seeing that secrecy had done more harm than good, released a full report, carefully worded but honest. They showed the data, the star maps, the empty systems. They explained why Earth had left the Conquered. Most people were angry at first, then afraid, then strangely proud. Their world had carried a terrible truth alone so others could keep living without panic. Now they could help. Schools taught students to write stories, sing songs, record memories, not for history but for survival. Cities held nightly gatherings where people shared hopes and fears under open skies. Even in the poorest neighborhoods, someone always found a way to send a voice into the grid. Lisa Grant returned to Mars Colony Theta, not as a linguist but as a teacher. She gathered children of all species, human, Varelian, Karathi, and taught them to speak from the heart. Not perfect grammar, not polished speeches, just truth. A boy from a refugee family spoke about missing his dog. A Varelian girl sang a song her grandmother taught her. Lisa recorded it all and sent it to Horizon. Every voice mattered. Dan Ruiz stayed in the ice lab, but his work changed. He no longer just analyzed signals. He helped build new relays, small, simple devices that any world could use to join the grid. He made them cheap, easy to fix, powered by sunlight or wind. He sent the plans freely across every open channel. Within weeks, colonies that had never spoken to Earth before began broadcasting. Their voices were rough, sometimes broken, but real. Admiral Nora Finch retired from active duty. She moved to a quiet house in Oregon, near Paul Dawson's old neighborhood, but she didn't stay quiet. She wrote letters to old contacts, to former enemies, to anyone who would listen. She told them about the power of a single honest word. Some called her naive. Others started their own listening circles. One Xanthari general, after reading her letter, ordered his fleet to stand down during a tense border standoff. "We have a bigger enemy," he told his officers, "and it is not each other." The war did not end with a treaty. It faded like a fever breaking. Soldiers grew tired of fighting when their children were sending lullabies into space. Leaders lost support when their people demanded connection, not conquest. Trade routes reopened not because of laws, but because a baker on Xylos wanted to hear a farmer's song from Earth, and a musician on Lumen missed the sound of human drums. The Galactic Concord was never rebuilt. In its place rose something looser, softer, harder to define: the Sentient Accord. It had no capital, no army, no rules, only a shared promise to keep speaking, keep listening, keep feeling. Membership was not granted. It was earned by sending your voice into the dark and receiving another's in return. Earth never rejoined any council. It didn't need to. It had become something else, a quiet center, a steady voice in the storm. Ships from 100 worlds now visited not for trade or politics, but to learn how humans held on to hope. They walked through cities where people still argued, still cried, still laughed under open skies. They saw that humanity's strength was not in its weapons or its tech, but in its refusal to go silent. Paul Dawson moved back to his small house in Ohio. He planted a garden. He fixed his old porch swing. Sometimes neighbors would stop by and ask what really happened out there among the stars. He never gave long answers. He'd just say, "We remembered we weren't alone, and we made sure the universe remembered too." One evening, as he sat watching fireflies blink in the dusk, a soft chime came from his compad. It was a message from Horizon 7. The anomaly had done something new. It had sent back a signal. Not words, not music, but a single tone, warm and low, repeating in a slow rhythm. Scientists couldn't explain it, but Lisa, listening from Mars, said it sounded like a heartbeat, or maybe a lullaby. Far beyond the Milky Way, in the endless space between galaxies, the great silence no longer hungered. It had heard enough. It had learned that emptiness was not the only truth, that even in the darkest void, a single voice could carry light, and so it stayed, not as a threat, not as a mystery, but as a listener. Back on Earth, a little girl in Seattle pointed to the sky and said, "Look, Mama, the stars are brighter tonight." Her mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. They're singing." And somewhere in the quiet between worlds, something sang back.